In a world where every policy decision ripples across borders, the relationship between the United States and China stands as one of the most consequential in modern history. And once again, that relationship is under strain. On April 9th, 2025, former President Donald Trump announced a major shift in U.S. trade policy. While most new tariffs would be paused for 90 days, tariffs on Chinese imports would surge, jumping to an aggressive 125%. Within hours, China retaliated, raising its own tariffs on American goods to 84%. The message from both sides is clear: the trade war is not over. But to understand the weight of this moment, we need to rewind the clock. The economic rivalry between the United States and China didn't begin yesterday. It's a complex, decades-long story, one that's shaped the global economy and continues to influence everything from consumer prices to foreign policy. Since the early 2000s, when China joined the World Trade Organization, the U.S. has grown increasingly dependent on Chinese manufacturing, while China has relied heavily on U.S. consumers and investment. The result? A deeply entangled economic relationship, but also one riddled with tension. Concerns over intellectual property theft, forced technology transfers, unfair subsidies, and currency manipulation have long been at the center of American complaints. China, in turn, has criticized what it sees as U.S. protectionism and hypocrisy in promoting free trade only when it serves American interests. The trade war officially escalated in 2018 under Trump's first administration, when sweeping tariffs were imposed on Chinese goods. China struck back with its own set of tariffs, and the cycle continued. While President Biden later softened some of these policies, Trump's return to the spotlight has reignited the confrontation. Now, with this new 125% tariff hike and China's 84% response, the question isn't just about numbers. It's about strategy, sovereignty, and power. This isn't just a trade dispute. It's a battle over the future of global economic leadership. On the surface, President Trump's announcement may seem like a typical policy maneuver, a mix of economic calculation and diplomatic pressure. But look closer, and it becomes clear. This is a political chess move, one aimed at reshaping not just trade policy, but the very foundation of America's global posture. In his speech, Trump framed the decision as a defense of American workers. He described the 125% tariff increase on Chinese imports as a protective shield necessary to counter decades of what he called unbalanced trade and intellectual property theft. According to him, China has taken advantage of American openness, flooding U.S. markets with cheap goods while offering little in return. By pausing most new tariffs for 90 days, Trump has bought himself a window, a strategic pause that allows the U.S. to reassess global trade flows. But by simultaneously escalating pressure on China, he's sending a message: America will no longer play nice if the rules aren't fair. The political response has been swift and divided. Republican lawmakers largely rallied behind the move. Senator Josh Hawley praised Trump's stance, calling it long overdue, while others labeled it a strong signal of America First economics returning to the center stage. Democrats, however, weren't impressed. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer accused Trump of using trade policy to stoke nationalist sentiment and distract from deeper economic issues, such as inflation and wage stagnation. Even within conservative circles, the reaction wasn't unanimous. Some business-focused Republicans expressed concern that the tariff hike could backfire, leading to higher prices for American consumers and putting additional pressure on small businesses that rely on imported goods and parts. And it's not just politicians weighing in. The American public remains split. While some view Trump's aggressive trade posture as necessary to protect domestic jobs and industries, others worry about the cost, both economic and diplomatic. Polls released just days before the announcement show a 49% disapproval rate of raising tariffs, especially among younger voters and urban residents. Meanwhile, in financial markets, the ripple effects were immediate. Investors were caught off guard, but not necessarily spooked. The Dow Jones Industrial Average surged over 1,800 points following the announcement. Analysts believe this counterintuitive reaction reflects hope that the 90-day pause might give breathing room for broader economic growth. Still, behind closed doors, many economists remain skeptical. As one expert put it, tariffs may be a tool, but they're a blunt one. And when the world's two largest economies use them like weapons, nobody wins. China didn't wait long to respond. Within 24 hours of Trump's tariff announcement, Beijing unveiled a sweeping retaliatory package, raising tariffs on American goods to 84%, targeting industries ranging from agriculture and automobiles to high-tech equipment. But this wasn't just tit for tat. It was a calculated strike. At the center of China's response lies a deeper strategy: economic deterrence and geopolitical messaging. By hitting critical U.S. exports, especially those coming from states that strongly supported Trump, China is doing what it has done before: weaponizing tariffs to influence American politics. The agricultural sector is once again in the crosshairs. Soybeans, corn, pork, products that Midwestern farmers rely on to stay afloat, now face heavier duties when entering China's market. In effect, China is applying pressure not just to Washington, but to Trump's political base. Automakers are also feeling the heat. Several U.S.-based manufacturers with global supply chains are now reevaluating production forecasts and export plans for the next quarter. Some, like Ford and Tesla, are reportedly seeking ways to reroute shipments or absorb costs internally to prevent price shocks. And then there's tech. China's increased tariffs on American-made chips, software, and industrial hardware signal another shift. The economic battle is moving into the digital arena. It's no longer just about goods, it's about control over the next generation of technology. Chinese officials released a statement shortly after the new tariffs were announced. It read in part, "The Chinese government remains committed to fair trade. However, we will not hesitate to defend our national interests and the stability of our economy." Translated politically, China is drawing a red line. Push too far, and it will push back hard. And while state media in China framed the response as measured and firm, international analysts view it as part of a broader pattern. China isn't merely reacting, it's positioning itself for long-term resilience. Beijing has been quietly diversifying its trade partnerships, strengthening economic ties with Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. Their Belt and Road Initiative, though controversial, has opened new markets, and their investments in semiconductor independence signal a desire to reduce reliance on the West altogether. Still, the economic hit is real. Chinese companies that rely on U.S. parts are feeling the strain, and consumers in both countries are likely to see rising prices again. For now, both governments are digging in. But while Trump's move was dramatic and China's response swift, this is not a moment. It's a chapter in a longer, more complex story about power, pride, and the cost of confrontation. While tariffs are a tool of foreign policy, the impact is often felt closest to home, in the aisles of grocery stores, in the factories of the Rust Belt, and on the balance sheets of small businesses trying to stay afloat. Let's be clear, tariffs are taxes. And although they're levied on foreign goods, the cost usually falls on American consumers and businesses. With a 125% tariff now placed on Chinese imports, the price of thousands of everyday products is expected to rise. Electronics, clothing, appliances, furniture, categories where China remains a dominant exporter, are likely to see price hikes in the coming weeks. For families already grappling with inflation, this is unwelcome news. And it's not just consumers. Small and mid-sized businesses are among the hardest hit. Many of them rely on Chinese parts, packaging, or machinery to operate. Unlike large corporations, they can't afford to absorb higher costs, meaning those costs are either passed on to customers or result in layoffs and closures. Take, for example, a Midwestern hardware supplier who imports components from Shenzhen. A tariff increase means either finding a more expensive alternative or paying more for the same product. Either way, the business loses competitiveness. Then there's agriculture. American farmers, already burned by previous rounds of tariffs, are bracing for another blow. China's retaliatory hike targets soybeans, corn, beef, and dairy, sectors that depend on export markets to survive. Some farming associations are warning that this could be the final straw for many small operations still recovering from COVID-era losses and extreme weather events. The impact isn't limited to just the U.S. and China. As the world's two largest economies throw economic punches, third-party nations, particularly in Europe, Asia, and Latin America, are feeling the shockwaves. Global supply chains are being disrupted again, Shipping costs are climbing, and multinational companies are reconsidering their investments, unsure of what the next policy shift might bring. The World Bank recently issued a cautious statement. Prolonged trade conflict between the U.S. and China risks lowering global GDP growth by up to 0.5% annually if not resolved through multilateral dialogue. That's hundreds of billions of dollars in potential economic loss, all stemming from decisions made in Washington and Beijing. But perhaps the most overlooked cost is uncertainty. Markets can adapt to change, even painful change, but when policy becomes unpredictable, business slows, investment freezes, growth halts. And in that kind of environment, it's not just trade that suffers, it's trust. Every economic decision is also a political one. And in the case of the U.S.-China trade war, the political stakes couldn't be higher. For Donald Trump, this latest round of tariffs is more than just an economic maneuver. It's a rallying cry, a signal to his base that the America First doctrine is alive and well. As the 2026 midterms approach and whispers of a 2028 comeback grow louder, Trump is betting that tough-on-China policies will energize supporters who feel globalization has left them behind. It's a familiar playbook. Frame China as the aggressor, position the U.S. as the victim of unfair trade, and cast yourself as the only leader willing to fight back. And for millions of voters, especially in industrial states, that message still resonates, but not without pushback. Democratic leaders have accused Trump of using economic nationalism to score political points, while ignoring the broader fallout. Some have even suggested that the 125% tariff hike is a distraction tactic meant to divert attention from domestic challenges like healthcare, education, and gun reform. On Capitol Hill, the division runs deep. Bipartisan calls for a more strategic, multilateral approach to China.
China's modernization has unfolded a magnificent picture and presented an extremely bright and brilliant prospect. At the same time, the road ahead will not be smooth. There will definitely be difficulties and obstacles, and we may encounter major tests such as high winds, rough seas, or even stormy waves. Taiwan is a sacred territory of China, and the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are connected by blood.
Europe remains cautious, balancing
blood is thicker than water.
And economic
we must adhere to the one China principle in the 1992 consensus, deep in cross-strait.
Many European leaders are preparing for long-term
economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation.
Russia, meanwhile,
promote the spiritual harmony of compatriots on both sides of the strait, and resolutely oppose Taiwan independence and separatist activities. The complete reunification of the motherland is the common wish of the Chinese people at home and abroad.
Are positioning themselves as
it is the general threat, the righteousness, and the will of the people. No one can stop the wheel of history.
Chaos. And within China itself, the political calculus is shifting too. President Xi Jinping has used Trump's aggressive trade posture to reinforce nationalist narratives, strengthening internal unity, and justifying continued investment in domestic innovation and self-reliance. In the end, this isn't just a trade dispute, it's a high-stakes political contest, one that could reshape the global order, redefine U.S. leadership, and determine how future generations perceive the balance of power in the 21st century. The United States and China have never had a simple relationship. Cooperation, competition, and confrontation, they've all existed in cycles, woven into decades of trade, diplomacy, and power struggles. But what we're witnessing today isn't just another chapter. It's a turning point. The 125% tariff hike, the 84% Chinese response, the surging stock market, the political finger-pointing, they're all signals of a deeper shift. A shift in how the world's two largest economies view each other and themselves. For American families, this could mean higher prices. For businesses, more uncertainty. For global markets, another round of instability. And for politicians, a fresh opportunity to frame the future. Yet amid all the noise, one thing remains clear. Economic warfare comes with no easy wins. There are no victors in a trade war, only survivors, strategists, and consequences that unfold slowly over time. The next few months will be critical. Will there be a breakthrough? Will cooler heads prevail? Or are we heading toward a deeper decoupling between East and West? Only time will tell. But no matter the outcome, the stakes are too high to ignore. This is more than policy. It's history in motion. So stay informed, stay curious. And as always, question the headlines. You've been watching Insert Channel Name, your source for in-depth, unbiased coverage of U.S. politics and the forces shaping our world. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. We'll be covering this story as it unfolds and bringing you the truth behind the sound bites. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware.